Welcome to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. It is time to make nutrition part of the conversation. I'm your host, Christina Veselak, and I'm so glad you're here. Did you know that it's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully? But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally. Have you ever wondered why so many committed people relapse or maybe even die? Why so many people on psychotropic medication still feel lousy and still have cravings? What if the missing piece is food, the right food? What if the right nutrients like amino acids or even eating protein every 4 hours could actually balance your brain chemistry and your mood without medication and support lasting recovery? In this podcast, we explore the powerful connection between feeding your brain well, mental health, relapse, and recovery from addiction. We will share insights from experts, inspiring recovery stories, and practical strategies you can use today. Whether you're in recovery, a healthcare professional, or someone passionate about emotional well being, this show is for you. Let's dive in and discover how fueling your body and brain with the right food, the right amino acids, and other key nutrients can fuel your transformation today. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Power Up Recovery with Nutrition, where we get to hear personal recovery stories about the power of nutrition in recovery. We get to hear from scientists, we get to hear from thought leaders, and from people in the field applying amazing knowledge to help others heal, transform, and thrive. And to that end, today I am delighted to welcome Diane Greco Allen, who is a nurse as well as a functional nutritionist and coach, and maybe some other things, who really has done a lot of work on some of the physiological struggles that we all may have. And with that, Diane, I'll let you run with it.
Well,
Welcome.
thank you so much for having me, Christina. It's wonderful to be here. And we met we actually didn't meet, but sort of like connected through the Integrative Medicine Mental Health Conference. And I have dedicated pretty much the most of my life to helping people with mental health problems because we don't even recognize them within ourselves sometimes. And so, my experience was, I came from a big Catholic Italian family, and there was a lot going on in that family. I am thankful for everything that brought me to where I am. It's been a beautiful experience, but it was very painful at times. So, so just in general, as a young girl, I had some issues with an eating issue. But it was mostly that, I was the first girl in the family. So that's why I like to look at people's family makeup and see where they fall. So I had older brothers, but there were six of us. So, looking at that makeup, we have to like reflect on our past and see, what were those things that brought us to where we are.
We sure do.
And yeah, so
We all have a story.
yeah, I mean, we do. And there was a lot of different types of addictions going on around me, as well as my own little addiction to food, So I had that. I call myself a food relationship coach because I really had that addiction to food, but I was in the kitchen. So I like to connect people to their kitchen place. What role did that play for them? Was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? Trying to think about that role. But I also, because I have four children now, my life transpired with mental health because my father was in the mental health role. And he worked at a state hospital, a local state hospital. And he taught them how to reupholster furniture because that was his trade. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we were from Italy. My grandmother she was so seamstress. My grandfather worked in coal and the railroad. Um, and then the other side of the family, they were all reupholstered. Yeah, they upholstered furniture. And so there was a lot around that. And then there was the cooking aspect. All of my aunts, everybody, my mother would like do all this cooking for everybody. It wasn't just for our family. And so sometimes my uncle would call her up and say, "You're coming to Toledo because we need you to do something with the ants. We're going to put on this production and you got to be a part of it." So, you know, there was always that cooking aspect. And since I was 10 years old, I was always in the kitchen.
What an amazing gift, Diane, because so many people did not grow up in the kitchen or are three generations out from the kitchen. Maybe their great grandmother loved to cook and loved to garden and loved to make wonderful food for the family. And then that started getting lost. And now so many people, are afraid to get into their kitchen or would love to and don't even know where to start.
That is so true. And sometimes you have to actually ask people, what did your kitchen look like when you grew up?
Mhm.
Because maybe it was a cluttered kitchen where they didn't cook. Maybe they were, I'm going to say this in a very gentle way, food hoarders, you know,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of food just trapped all over the place. Was there open space for you to even actually cook? And I've
Mhm.
seen so many scenarios, even as a nurse, I go into homes where some people do not access their kitchen to cook. It is mostly a place where they have all their medication or there's something else taking up their kitchen space. So you really have to be individual with this because everybody has a different experience. And
Mhm.
some people, like you said, did not were not introduced to cooking. We did we started leaning towards quick foods, and I ended up working at McDonald's. So, as the family evolved and our
Mhm.
experiences, because there was such a large family, our experience moved forward. In high school, my experience became go to work for McDonald's. Then I worked for some other restaurants. They were full scale restaurants. And so I've learned from both of those experiences, what people expect when they come for that.
Mhm.
You know, if you're fast, you're fast. If you're coming to sit down, you're sit down. But I also experienced some situations where, because I'm also about mindful eating and,
Yes. Yes.
that whole relax, be in place. We always did that on Sunday. So that was our Sundays. You had to be in the home for Sunday meal. And that was
Mhm.
no questions asked.
Mhm.
You had to be there. So that was one very good thing. And my parents also instilled in us that dinner time was dinner time. If you
Right.
had to work, that was a different story, but there was always a meal at dinner time. And because my mother worked, she would call me on the phone and tell me what to make.
Mhm.
So not everybody dealt with that experience. So like you said, knowing what to do when you're in the kitchen and also knowing the safety around food handling. Because
Mhm.
once the kids get into college, that just goes right out the door. And people are just eating. I mean, there's a lot of people that do this at home, but cold pizza, we ate cold pizza, but it was like homemade cold pizza, you know. Um, but college experience, way different. The hygiene out the window, foods that are brought into those dorms. I mean, you're just got a slew of, no wonder these kids get sick in college, you know.
Yeah.
So, and they
Interesting.
wouldn't know what to do. You can tell them to bring a rice cooker, but some colleges don't let them bring some cooking device in there to do, your own
Mhm.
little soup or whatever, But there are simplified ways, that you can prepare foods.
Mhm.
But my whole journey with my health issues led me down the diabetic path to know the carb smart version.
Hmm.
and to be more quality and quantity aware, because those are where
Yes.
we fall into traps, especially if you're eating out all the time.
Especially, and I think you can eat out well. You just have to do it really mindfully. This is why we created what we call our 5-star pro recovery diet. Okay. It's protein, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates, mostly colorful veggies, and then individualized, personalized to your own energy expenditure, your own ethnicity, your own likes and dislikes, but also your own food allergies and your own, what foods work for you and what foods don't work for you. And then as clean as you possibly can make it, because our livers simply don't need anything more to detoxify.
That is so beautiful. And you know what I think, Christina, our paths cross for purposes. That 5-star thing is, I'm all about the 5 W's and the 5 points of awareness. So
Uh-huh.
those are my things that I deal with, and I encourage with my people because of my book. It might be your pancreas, but in that book also, like yours, that's just beautiful because you have to pick those out, and I call them the PFFCs. The proteins,
Yeah.
the fats, the fibers, the carbs. The PFFCs. But yes, I can't wait to get your book out
I
there.
will.
I will share that to my audience also. But
Because it's a framework. You see, Diane, we need a framework to choose the foods that feed our brain as well as feed our souls and bodies. And none of us were ever taught the framework by which we need to think to feed our brains. Right. And there's so many confusing diets out there. There's veganism, there's carnivore, there's everything in between. And it's like, I'm just going to run away and eat what I want. Well, that doesn't exactly work either. So that's why I developed my 5-star pro recovery, philosophy. It's a framework for choosing what you're going to eat, whether it be in the grocery store, the restaurant, your kitchen, your snack, your
right.
friend's house, right?
Yeah. And then not being ashamed to say that's something that I can't have right now, or that I am not able to partake or participate with. Because that I also find is very difficult. So my journey led me to being sort of like malnourished before I started my pregnancies, but I worked as a nurse and I was working night shifts. So on those
Hmm.
night shifts, everybody wants to bring those nurses those bad treats. And that's what
They
I
do.
relied on,
They do.
so those types of things. We didn't know as nurses. We were only given 1 semester of nutrition as a nurse. And the nurse that taught us, she had swollen ankles. And I thought, I learned from people that were really not understanding their own health.
Mhm.
And then I was married to a physician. He was a urologist. For 28 years, he watched me go through all these health hazards, all these health issues, not understanding me and thinking that it was just this woman's crazy or something's not right with her. And, then you start
Mhm.
at questioning yourself, you know,
Yeah, you do.
because I reached out. It was 20 years of research on endocrine health. I reached out to like hundreds of people to figure out
Hmm.
what's wrong. And then you realize that when you stress your body so much and it burns out and you're not
Yeah.
feeding it properly and you're not sleeping, and then the caregiver burnout part. Because I don't know about you, Christina. I don't know how your parents are, but I took care of both my parents with cancer. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, yeah, that was part of it. No, my mom had ovarian cancer. She lived 18 years. And I say that's a mental thing. She put,
It is.
through 18 years. My dad, he had lung cancer. He only lasted a year and a half to 2 years after he was diagnosed. But he had many underlying health issues.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
he reupholstered furniture, and that's another thing you have to think about exposures.
To toxins.
Yes, he was around all this stuff that he was putting on his furniture and shellac this and the threads that came off. I mean, he pulled furniture out that from homes that had mold. I mean, he was around a lot. And we also lived in I dealt with black mold. So that was part of my underlying recovery efforts. But you're right. So many people don't know that the impact of their food impacts their brain health. And, and how that, just learning. I love that you did a very simplistic. My book's just a little bit too much, I think.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it because I have a very good friend who got pancreatitis earlier in the summer. She's incredibly healthy. She's a therapist, a functional nutritionist. She's very, very high level, very educated, and she ended up with and takes very good care of herself. And she ended up with pancreatitis. And now she's having tummy issues that we can't figure out. And so I
Right.
was very excited to hear about your book and meet with you for my friend's sake.
Yes. And what I found is, and it started in childhood, I think that I had a type A behavior.
Mhm.
And it was so I always warn, send a little warning out to those who also were multiple caregivers early in life. And I was, because my sister she was born 10 years younger than me. Now, my sister dealt with cardiometabolic conditions, and she
Mhm.
was thrown into the mental health department and was working with a lot of mental health practitioners. She ended up dying 3 years ago.
Oh, I'm
So
so sorry.
at the age of, she was just going to turn 50.
She was
So
young.
yes, yes. So she's 10 years younger than me. And part of my passion is to get the word out there. You got to step up to the plate. You have to be very aware of what you're putting on, because she loved my mother so much. She wanted to imitate everything my mother cooked. And it was pizzelles and biscotti and pizza. And so she wanted to perfect it to show my mother that she could do the same thing. But in the meantime, her health just kept dwindling away. So it was
Mhm.
really, you want to be able to attach to some of those flavors. And I do a very clean eating program using authentic seasonings, flavors and things to bring that Italian part of us, because I'm full-blooded Italian. And
Mhm.
anybody who comes from any background, you want to bring that flavor in and try to help
Yes.
that be a part of your life, because that was a part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And it's
yes,
comfort food, and we get to have our comfort food upgraded,
right. I love
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, upgrading it. And not you don't want to diminish anything that, I never want to put my parents in a bad place. Although I sometimes say my mom served her share of diabetes to the world. Because she did. We had massive pizza parties. I mean, there were people coming to our house all the
Oh,
time,
that sounds
but
fun.
we involved the neighborhood. So it was really community. And that's what eating is, your mealtime, thinking
Mhm.
about that mindful eating. Even if you are alone, who can you think about during that time that brought you pleasure with an eating experience, or just being mindful about how you're nourishing yourself. Yeah,
That's right. That's
yeah.
right.
So, but I'm so sorry to hear about your friend, because I've come across people who professionals, pancreatitis, pancreatic cancer, and they don't know any other way, and then they go down a path where it just gets worse and worse and worse. So yeah.
So tell us about the pancreas and pancreatitis.
Okay, so in general, most people are born, with a pancreas, and functionally, hopefully, it's functioning. And depending on what type of formulas you were given at birth, if you were breastfed, those types of things can have a role in how often you were fed and what types of formulas you were fed. Now, those pancreas cells, there's exocrine and endocrine. The endocrine, of course, is what the insulin cells work
Mm-hmm.
with. And then the exocrine is the digestive juices and things like that. But I think that a lot of people forget too that there's interplay with the pancreas, not just with blood sugar regulation and digesting those foods, but also with that pH balance of the stomach. So,
Oh,
so the
I did not
pH,
know that.
yeah, the pH balance of the stomach is also a big, they'll check for bicarbonate levels in the stool for people with pancreatitis or things like that to see, because that's another factor that plays a role. But there's many things, because if you have, like I had chronic gastritis for years, and that was a combination from poor eating, and then that inflammatory process in the stomach allowed for H. pylori to take hold. And I had multiple gastroscopies that did not show H. pylori. And then it was like the fifth or sixth one. Then they said, you have H. pylori. And then they went down and did a deeper thing and said, you also have celiacs. So, it was
Okay.
like it took hold in that, the infections take
Environment.
over. Yes, the environment. So the pH balance, not just balance. It's not about balance. It's about what your pH levels. So many people are put on antacids and they're put on PPIs and all this,
Right, which is
but
awful.
yes, and then that stops the actual production of acid, and then you're adding foods that turn into acid, and then it just gets all mixed up. And then once that stomach and that pancreas are just having issues, they're just trying to figure out what to do, and they're like in distress. And then you got going further, maybe you're having stomach emptying issues, that a lot of
Hmm.
people start having the,
So
uh,
that's my friend.
yes, everything slows up.
Hmm.
Everything slows up. It turns into hypothyroidism, a picture of hypothyroidism, because the stomach emptying slows up, the gastroparesis is what they call it, but also the gallbladder starts having issues where it's not emptying, or you start getting stones and then you can't, those don't come out. And then people are having their gallbladders removed. I didn't understand it. I was working with a natural practitioner and she said, do this with your food, try to do this. And coming from a medical side, I just said, look, I'm so uncomfortable. I want this thing out. So I went down that path. I went down some bad paths. I had my gallbladder removed. I had 2 parathyroid glands reduced, but I
Mm.
knew enough to know that calcium played a role in what I was doing. So dairy came right out of I took that right out, because I was over calcium and the Tums and all the different over-the-counter medications you're taking for an upset
Hmm.
stomach. You're actually adding to the problem.
Hmm.
You think you're
Hmm.
helping it, but you're adding. Now, bismuth, which they, use sometimes, that Pepto-Bismol,
Right.
might have a little bit of a help, but you got to get back to the root cause. You got to, why are you taking that in the first place? So it's a balance of what you're ingesting. And sometimes people are over drinking anything.
Mhm.
So they're washing away not only good bacteria, the types of carbonated drinks a lot of people rely on, that carbonation messes up with the pH balance in the gut. And so even if it's a diet drink, the carbonation like messes everything up. And then your body starts not being able to absorb any of the foods, because it starts with the saliva,
Hmm.
when you put it in, and it goes down, and people are having problems with their esophagus, their swallowing. I had a small hiatal hernia and that could have enlarged, but that got under control with me reducing the portion sizes, and that's what I think people need to know: quality food and portion sizes, which is quantity. And then
Hmm.
knowing that you're feeding, what you're really doing is feeding your immune system. 70% of your immune system from the mouth, going all the way through into your small bowel and your intestines. So I think that a lot of people might not know that this digestive system has a really important purpose, and the foods that we choose to put in our body, they are so important for us to be able to think properly.
So, in other words, and a lot of this is in your book, right?
Right, right.
Oh, good. I'm
Yes,
looking forward to reading it. In my advanced class, my advanced certification course, the very first module is all about digestion.
nice.
Normal digestion, abnormal digestion, what can go wrong, and specifically how messed up digestion impacts mental health and therefore impacts addiction recovery.
Love it. That is beautiful. And like I said, I'm willing to share your book to my audience too, because sometimes they need to see different ways of looking at these at what someone's saying. You know,
Mhm.
you might hear from one person in one way, and you're saying, "That sounds so restrictive." What she's talking about, I have to stop eating my bread that I eat with my meal every day. I have to do this, all these things. When
But
you
by the way, Diane, I have been gluten free for 40 years.
hands up
So
to you. Yeah, I'm 20, so we're in good spot together. Yeah, and the other thing is too is the gluten part of carbohydrates, understanding, the grains and those refined grains that they put those in everywhere. My daughter, this was another big part of my picture, developed a soy allergy, peanut and soy. And
mhm.
so when she developed that allergy, then my sons we were finding all these nut allergies. And I'm like, what's going on with all this? Well, it wasn't just those nut allergies and tree allergies. Well, what we were finding was that and what they know now is evidence, is that once your body is hypersensitive from some of these refined grains, those refined grains can hype up the the sympathetic part of the nervous system. So that sympathetic part where your fight or flight causes that
Mhm.
anxiety like we talk about. So it might be food anxiety. Now, food anxiety can look like different things, but when it comes to eating something and then it's getting your blood sugar up, it's going up and you're getting that high from the sugar. And then all of a sudden, later on, it's like you got a real deep low and it might be your blood sugar dropped. And then you get depressed. You're like, I'm just so wiped out, I can't take it. And I think of depression as immune depression and uh, not just immune depression, but also, overwhelming parts of your body. But sometimes there's other things that we look at in our life that are a part of what we're eating, and it might be grief we're dealing with. So, I lost a lot of people throughout my life. And then you start questioning. So my 5 points of awareness are what, why, where, when, and who with. Those parts of why we are eating and what we're eating. And so those 5 areas, I've talked to people who've made their own W's. I love it
Mhm.
when people are creative. But my sister was a big part of my life. And she's no longer here. And it's not just that. Even my family, I eat very differently than they do. So they are not as accepting of my way of eating. So it can be a little out of your comfort zone for them, or out of their comfort zone. So
Right.
you have to be confident with moving forward in knowing you're helping yourself, and not be I would say not be upset with how people view things. That's their perception. You know what you're doing for yourself, and you have to be confident with taking on those positive directions.
Hmm. I remember when I first went gluten-free, and this was 40 years ago, so nobody knew anything about going gluten-free, except it turned my life right side up. Nobody understood. They thought I was being picky, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and and I would go to a restaurant and I would ask the server, to please talk to the chef and make sure that the grilled fish wasn't dusted with flour.
Right.
And she would say she did, but she didn't. And I would start eating my fish and I would get a reaction. And it was like, oops, there is flour on this fish. And then I'd call the server over and say, I think there's, and I used to be very shy. So this was very hard for me. I
Right.
think there's flour on this fish. Will you please ask the chef? And she would come back and say, oh, I'm so sorry, there is. It's like, yeah, I know. Um, and then just learning how to be assertive, how
Yes.
to ask for what you want and need, how to not be embarrassed about it, how when I go to a friend's house, say, I will be grateful for anything you feed me. I love everything you give me, but just please make sure that it's gluten free.
Right. Yeah. Being assertive is a big part of where I think I find with clients, I have to actually talk with them and say, when you go in, how will you say this? How
Yeah.
will you, walk them through some scenarios? Because it's taking ownership of what you know will affect your body. Now, my daughter with her soy and peanut allergy, she went to culinary school and it was really difficult for her. So then she had to figure out a way because they said, you're a liability to our school. That's
Yeah.
literally what that. But you know what? She made it through. She did have some issues where she went from Charlotte to up to New England. She went to Providence, Rhode Island after Charlotte, but she went to Johnson, Wales. And so
Mm.
some of the things, like even what, and I want to share this with you, Christina, because Thanksgiving's coming up, and I happened to go to our local store. It's Trader Joe's, and you have to
Yes.
really know what you're looking for. You really
Yeah.
do. You have to know. You, if there's
I
more than
love
three,
Trader
four,
Joe's, but you have to read labels.
yes, you do. So what I love that they have is a holiday veggie hash.
Ooh.
So this holiday veggie hash, I always encourage my clients to use this as their stuffing
Uh-huh.
if they want to make turkey. Some people will not eat meat.
Right.
And I understand that, but I am an amino acid person. I believe in the amino acids because I know that's what you are. Yeah, you have to get those amino acids in.
You
And
do.
so
From wherever.
I just say that look for the freshest and the cleanest products. Like I always mention quality, but substituting, finding the substitutions and then using sage is a big part of Thanksgiving meals. That flavor of sage and just bringing that poultry mix seasoning in and doing it in a way that still gives you that flavor and that taste. And there's so many different ways you can do it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've had a good experience with Thanksgiving. Was that something big in your house?
It was big in my house, as was Christmas. But my mother always, well, once she learned about nutrition, everything changed. And so she did a really good job at making things fresh and natural and lower carby-ish. And so, we would do Brussels sprouts and we would do green beans and we would do mashed potatoes, but she would make a wonderful gravy out of the turkey uh, turkey juices
Right, right.
you
Yeah.
know.
And
And then
there's,
when she made stuffing, yeah, she would make a stuffing out of breadcrumbs and the whole thing, but it would have chopped celery in it and chopped carrots in it and cranberries in it and walnuts in it
yes, yeah,
and sausage in it. And so the ratio of all these other things to the breadcrumbs, right? You still got enough breadcrumbs to think, okay, or little bread cubes to say, oh yeah, this is stuffing. But it was mixed with all these other wonderful things that the ratio, right, you ended up with just a little tiny little bit of bread and a whole lot of everything else.
Yes, and that crowding out is like the best way, I think, when you're adding all the good things in and you're
Mm.
crowding out, because ours was, my mother did, we called it mirepoix. My daughter tells me, Mom, it's mirepoix. And that's the celery, the carrots, and the onions. You know,
Right.
you buy, yeah. So any culinary terms she comes up with, it's like, okay, Lindsay, I'll try to remember that. But I did take some culinary classes to get certified in understanding these terminologies and things like that, which was good. And it also helped me understand, I didn't know garlic was a part of the onion family until like 6 years ago. I was cooking with garlic all my life. Shallots, garlic, we didn't eat
Uh-huh.
shallots as much as we ate just red onion, white onion, garlic, and the green onion. We knew those. But my former husband, who was a urologist, he taught me about leeks because he came from a farm. He taught me about a whole new area. And I was like, wow, leek soup, this, yeah. So everything that came to me, I think, came here for a purpose. And that was to
Mm.
help round things out in understanding how important our vegetables are and the minerals that come from our vegetables and
Yes,
beets and
yes,
everything. They are medicine, they are
yes.
medicinal. But then they're at Thanksgiving, we had a combination where my mother-in-law did the sausage with she did some sausage and things different, but they used cornbread stuffing and it was just in a box, so it
Mm.
ended
Yeah.
up being, yeah. So that's where the other thing was. But my mom, we were all bread. It was just, there was
Italian.
we were bread and butter and then the celery and we didn't do carrots in our stuffing. We had
Okay.
massive amounts of stuffing. Then we had pasta with our Thanksgiving, and
Uh-huh.
there was ravioli. That table was overloaded. There was no room. You couldn't walk after you left that
And if you
place.
had celiac disease, you were screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
but
So, okay,
yeah.
so Diane, what is your Thanksgiving dinner going to look like this year?
Well, what I do every year is I make a turkey. I do turkey breasts because I cook sometimes just for myself. If I don't do Thanksgiving on the day, like say
Mm-hmm.
somebody invites me for another day,
Right.
I even offer, but I do beautiful cranberry jelly, and that's made with chia seeds. It's got no gelatin. I make it with chia seeds, and I make a beautiful, it's a cranberry salad actually, and it's a
Uh-huh.
jelly salad. But it's got pears and apples and walnuts, and just like you would a
It's
Waldorf
delicious.
salad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do that, and then I do a basic, turkey breast, and then the other sides are probably butternut squash or a combination of butternut squash. But I might do a hash like this. So
Hmm.
it's all very basic. I do not bring any types. I don't use gluten-free breads. I just stayed away from all that. I just
Hmm. It's
went
better.
towards the vegetables. And now in a big salad with radishes. And my mom was good about that. We
So
always
is
had,
mine. So is mine.
yes, big salad, and you had every vegetable in that salad that you could imagine. And that was part of I was in the kitchen. I was a prep cook my whole life. I was a sous chef,
Uh-huh.
you know. And I don't know, Christina, did you do a lot of the cooking when you were growing up?
Well, my mother was an amazing gourmet chef. She was from England, and England does not have a great culinary reputation, but my mother was and did. But she worked full time, so she would let me, and we usually had some sort of babysitter, know what she wanted made. So we would prep it, and then she would come home and she would have her glass or two or three of wine, and while she was cooking dinner, I do not know how my mother could work a full day and then put
Yeah,
on a gourmet dinner every single night, but she did.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
the moment she came home, we were, in I want to say dragged into the kitchen, but it was happier than dragged. Okay.
Yeah.
So we joined her in the kitchen, and yes, we did all the prep work too. The chopping of the onions, the chopping of the potatoes, the stirring things, and so I learned how to cook beautiful, healthy food because of my mother's love for it.
Isn't that beautiful?
And
That
I
is
think
so, yes,
and
valuable.
I think that's one reason I ended up as a nutritionist and really valuing food and nutrients and loving it is because of my mother's love for it. And then when my father got, heart condition and all sorts of things, she really upped her food quality. I mean, it had always been good, but then she brought it up to,
Right.
supreme. And I've always ended up with a love for that.
That's so beautiful. I would have loved to have met your mother. I
Yeah.
have this I love England. And I went over for the first time to see what the food was like over there. Now they do not put as many things in their foods that they sell. But at the same time, I understand. I always followed Queen Elizabeth, and I
Hmm.
said she didn't like have garlic in her kitchen. She didn't like anybody bringing any garlic in or eating garlic. And I was like, well, there goes some of the reasons why it's part of it's medicinal for viral, purposes, because of all the
And for the
um,
heart.
yes, yes. And it helps the blood circulation and whatever. But so many benefits to these foods that some people have totally just thrown in the trash and said, I'm never going to do that again. But I wanted to mention something because our experience has brought us to where we are. But
Hmm.
when we're dealing with clients and then understanding their experiences, I've come across many people who have a problem with just palatable food for them. They're tricked up by the texture of foods.
Hmm.
And they said, I won't eat that because this is not like,
Hmm.
because they're used to peanut butter and jelly. They're used
Hmm.
to ice creams and all the yogurts. And sometimes that's their whole meal. I know a woman who literally, she was living off of ice cream. So, I mean, I've seen people go down these tracks. I mean, I was addicted to ice cream. I can't say anything, but I was addicted to a lot of carbs. Um, and throughout nursing school, I had multiple, that was the other thing, the dental issues alone from eating all those sweets really played a
Hmm.
role. And then you think about infections that
Yes,
affect the brain.
that affect the brain. All
And
those
some of these
toxins that go straight up.
Yes. So, not only, you're around a lot of people sometimes during the holidays, you're eating a lot of sweets that wear your body down. Maybe you're running around, you have kids like I did, and I was going crazy. And then you're not sleeping. And what I had to modify a lot was that big picture of how much food I was going to make, and then say, I got to be reasonable. Okay. Because I would like keep adding on dishes.
Mm-hmm.
I was like my mother. We were going to add this on and add that on. And I said, no, for today, this is what I can do. This is the reasonable thing I can do. Then I had to modify the way I thought about visiting people. Because if somebody invited me to dinner, if they didn't ask me to bring a dish, I would say, do you want me to bring a dish? And if they said no, I had to get used to that. Food was our love language. We had to bring food, you know?
Right, right.
I was going to bring something. I can't go without bringing it. What do I do? So there were many modifications in the way of thinking about food, but some people, that's not their case, and
Hmm.
that's where you have to look at who's in front of you and say, okay, that's a whole different scenario. They're lonely. They don't have anybody to eat with. They never did. And so that's a different scenario. And that also is a mental health concern
Well, it
because,
is, but that's the personalization in my 5-star pro recovery, framework. is personalizing it. So you're right, having that dialogue with clients about what works for them, what might they enjoy, what are they willing to try that's new, what can we take that they'll eat and make it even just a little healthier, and then just a little healthier,
Right.
and
Expand.
celebrate,
Yeah.
expand and celebrate every single win. You have to
Right.
celebrate every single win because these lifestyle changes can be so daunting and so overwhelming and can require thinking about it and logistical changes and grieving. You know, when I gave up gluten, I grieved it.
Yes. Yes.
I
I know.
grieved
Yes.
some of
Yes.
my favorite foods. It's like people giving up alcohol, you
Yeah.
know, you grieve and then you have to figure out how, I never became addicted to any substances. I ended up becoming a compulsive reader to manage my anxiety, but not substances. But when I'm working with my clients who have alcohol use disorder and who are trying to learn how to socialize without alcohol, I
Right.
would talk
Big
about
problem.
learning how to socialize without gluten.
That's
OMG.
beautiful. Yes. Yes.
Now
Beautiful.
that's a
What?
challenge.
Yes, totally. And I think that bringing that forward to compare a little bit of that experience, because
Mhm.
it is, I mean, oh my gosh, I still have, you know how they have those, what is that song at Christmas time where you've got things up in your head that you're thinking about for
Yeah.
Christmas, the cookies and everything. That was like Fig Newtons. I mean, it was like, okay, I like biscotti, but I love pizzelles. Okay, those
Uh,
things are going
uh,
around in my head.
right,
And
right,
my
right.
son said that. He said he dreams about because he stopped drinking, and he says he dreams about drinking. He's so fearful that he's going to fall back into drinking habits that are unhealthy that he's afraid to even tell anybody that he's been sober for like 4.5, 5 years. But that's what happens, I think, with people that you can say you fall off the gluten-free wagon or whatever, but um, I tell my kids because I am a chocolate and nut aholic. But if I eat too many chocolates and too many nuts, I also fall off that little wagon because then I go on this little spin dial and then I just want to eat some more. And
Right. And you want more, more and more and more. By the way, just a little tip for your son. What I have found in my years of working with people coming off alcohol is that whenever you have what we call a using dream, it's a sign that your neurotransmitters are depleted,
very
that
nice
you're
to know
under
that.
stress, your neurotransmitters are depleted to the point that they can't step up and help you cope with the stress.
Beautiful.
And so your brain starts saying, right? And this is where I know we're not talking about amino acid therapy in this conversation, but this is precisely where amino acid therapy can come in, rebuild those neurotransmitters. And so the drinking dream becomes a signal not to be afraid that you're going to go back to drinking, but it's a signal that something is out of balance and
Oh
needs to
yeah.
be attended to.
Yes, and he goes to he's been directed to functional nutrition practitioners. He's been in some. I want to say I don't want to just say him, but sometimes you go through those denial. But he's also dealing with a lot of fear about reaching out outside of the VA. So it's a combination. He also I've gifted him like a panel from Dr. Mark Hyman's Function Health. I've done Function. I also am doing Stello right now because I want
What's
to.
that?
Stello is the glucose continuous. It's the most reasonable amount you can pay for. It's not through
Okay,
my insurance. It's $99, and then you get for so many months. But I have
nice.
monitored because I also have had seizures. But the other thing that I want to real quick mention is that some people that have had head injuries in any of the sports arena, they don't even know they were dealing with that in addition to maybe an alcohol addiction or another type of addiction. And
It
that also, yeah.
it's one, so I spent 20 years with a practice in Denver specializing in the person with chronic relapse. And, everybody else has treatment failures. And what I found is that the one thing everybody had in common is they weren't eating real food in a regular manner. So that's the first thing we fixed. And then there was undiagnosed, untreated traumatic brain injury, ADHD, trauma, and insomnia were the other really big things that people were stumbling over. So I've been getting to know, and maybe you have as well, Dr. Michael Lewis. Do you know of him?
No, but I know all the practitioners that were at the conference and then Dr. Mark Hyman and some of that, but I'll look him up.
Well,
Greenblatt.
look up Dr. Michael Lewis, because I know you're working with the VA
Yeah,
and with veterans. He used to be a Army captain. He was a surgeon in the Army. He was also an epidemiologist. But when he came out, he was very concerned with the number of service members being discharged with traumatic brain injury that were actually disabling.
yes,
And he got into researching high dose omega 3 fatty acids
yes,
to
yes, yes,
reduce the symptoms of brain injury. He found that you can put somebody on like 10 to 15 grams per day for a week of a really good quality fish oil like Nordic Naturals. And within a week, the remaining symptoms will go away or significantly diminish. And sometimes you need to be on it longer. Now, I've
right.
got a wonderful story about that myself. Um, and so you're talking about brain injury that, yes, that's a huge relapse trigger for people. And bringing in that high dose fish oil can turn everything around and can
Right.
actually take away alcohol cravings as well.
Yes. Yeah, I believe in all that, and I've learned from many of the practitioners in the functional nutrition and mental health field that that has worked. And like I said, Dr. Greenblatt and a couple of the other doctors. I mean,
Mhm.
I've followed many Dr. Lustig, Robert Lustig, and
Mm.
so yes, I really appreciate that. Dr. Michael Lewis, I'll write that down and make sure I get connected. And Christina, I thank you so much for letting me come to talk with you. I would love to follow up with you.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is the beginning of a what's going to be a lovely friendship and collaboration. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. And Diane, if people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
The best way, I have a website. It's called Digestive Distress Solutions. And I
Uh-huh.
want to say that it's a long name, but that makes you be mindful about thinking and talking slower.
Uh-huh. That's right.
DDS. It's like teeth, DDS. But also, I have, well, I'm on social media everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on the FMCA site for health coaches or on FNLP site. But I'm on LinkedIn. And
Okay.
I also have a Facebook page where you can book a an appointment with me. I am going to give you my email in case anybody wants to reach out personally. d.grecoallen at gmail.com. And that's GRECOALLEN. And just put in there interested in learning about, you know, recovery.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
it's been lovely meeting you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. I'm Christina Veselak, your host, and I hope today's episode has inspired and equipped you with new insights and tools to support your recovery journey or practice. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who could benefit from the knowledge shared here. Stay connected with us for more episodes filled with practical advice, expert wisdom, and inspiring recovery stories. Remember, nutrition is a powerful tool in mental health and relapse prevention. Power up your recovery today. I'm Christina Veselak, and I'll see you next time.